Here is my £8 MacBook Pro from 2008. I bought it at Spares and Repairs, so of course it doesn't turn on. I plan on getting it working and installing Arch Linux on it. Before we get going, I need to see if it turns on when powered. I've got this MagSafe 1 to USB-C adapter, so I can plug it into my normal laptop charger. There's life in the old girl. We get the Mac chime, and then we wait, and we get a white screen, followed by a boot error screen, which I suspect means there's either no hard drive or the hard drive is dead. But let's see if the battery takes charge. And it didn't turn off, which I was surprised about. So this 17-year-old battery is holding some charge. Just bear in mind, if this MacBook was a person, it'd be old enough to drive. Right, it's time to get inside. First off, I get the battery out by turning this locking screw. Then undo the 3 screws holding the clip in. And we get access to the RAM slots and the hard drive slot. Pop the RAM out. And there's this white, greasy substance on both of them, of which I have no idea what it is. And then a mystery screw falls out. Also, no hard drive. That's the boot error explained. To get to the inner workings of the MacBook, I have to undo what seems like an absurd amount of screws, of which most are different. I can then crack the keyboard off, being careful to undo the ribbon cable underneath, which was tricky with my bare paw hands. First thing I see is the blackness around the CPU heat pipe. No idea if that's meant to be like that. And now it makes sense where my mystery screws came from earlier. It's from the hard drive caddy. And at this point I was hoping I could find the other 3 screws, which luckily all turned out to be there. And then I take a moment just to look. I've not worked on anything this ancient before, so it's interesting to see how much things have changed. Like any old bit of tech, I want to repaste the CPU and clean out the vent. To do this, I undo the screws holding the heatsink down over the CPU. Unplug the CPU cooling fan, and a bit of brute force and ignorance, and the heatsink is out. And this vent is gross, filled with decent chunks of dust. Quick brush to clean it out. And this thermal paste is crusty. I start off with some IPA to clean it off, but then it's so dried out I can flake it off. And let's ignore those 2 scratches I've just put in the heatsink. Clean the CPU of the old thermal paste. Then repaste it. And fit the heatsink back together. Then a quick clean of the RAM to get the white grease off, and I fit 1 stick, and then I remember I have a stash of RAM. DDR3, DDR3, nope. DDR2, but only 1 GB, so stick with what I've got. Fit the last stick of RAM. SSD time. I do have a few spare 2.5-inch hard drives, but I also have a 120GB SSD in this old micro desktop. Crack the case open, and still the SSD. And then I fit it into the caddy using the mystery screws we found earlier. With that done, one last brush to remove all the remaining dust bunnies. And no fancy blower here. It's time to put it all back together. Keyboard back on. Hook up this cable. The laptop looks like it's had a hard life. Definitely been dropped on this corner, but for £8, what can you expect? Then, screw the case back together with what felt like a dozen different types of screws. Quick clean with some IPA, and the old girl is looking good. Bit wonky, but clean. Plug in the charger, and let's hope it still works. And I hear the reassuring Mac chime, and the screen is on. So it's time to install Arch Linux. NVMe plugged in with Ventoy on. Holding Alt and press on. Select EFI boot. Then select Arch Linux from the list of ISOs. And we're into the Arch Linux install process. So it's definitely time for a beer. Using the Arch install script, we begin. Select language for the install. Keyboard layout, UK for me. Select language for system, English, GB. Mirrors, mine is United Kingdom. Disk configuration, partition, select SSD, ext4 file format, bootloader, system boot, hostname, Joe. Root password, can you guess? Username, Joe. Password, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes to being a super user. This will be a desktop, and we're running 2 GB of RAM. It will be XFCE4, as it's so lightweight. Graphic drivers, leave as default. Network config, I'm ready on Ethernet. Time zone, Europe/London. Then select install. Arch will do its thing and install. At this point, I feel like I'm in the Matrix. Once install is completed, a reboot is needed. And Arch starts up as normal. Log in with my secure password. This is my first time using XFCE4 on Arch, and already I can tell it's bare bones. So it's time to update packages. Sudo pacman -syu. Turns out Arch install has already pulled the latest packages on the install process as I was hooked up through Ethernet. Next, I install OBS for a screen recording. Install's fine, a little slow, but it gets there. I go to open OBS, and I get this. Turns out, the drivers for the GPU in this 2008 MacBook Pro are not supported. So when OBS queries a GPU, it goes, nope, and throws an error. Luckily, there's a backup. Simple Screen Recorder. A lot more forgiving than OBS. However, Simple Screen Recorder isn't in Arch's main repos. So I had to build it from source via ARU, and on this Core 2 Duo, it was painfully slow. I installed BTOP so I could see how this MacBook handled the install process of Simple Screen Recorder. And the MacBook appeared to struggle with the graphics from BTOP, so I went to my default, HTOP, so I could see the RAM and CPU usage. But anyway, Screen Recorder installed and working. I wanted to get Network Manager installed for Wi-Fi. It's a simple one-line install. But I couldn't get Wi-Fi working. Couldn't get the applet for Wi-Fi to show up, so I couldn't connect to Wi-Fi. After 30 minutes, I gave up, and I settled on sticking with Ethernet. First bit of real software I want to see is the one I'm oddly obsessed with, LibreOffice. Install all goes fine. A little slow, but that's the theme for this. Open Application Finder and search for it, and there we can see LibreOffice. Slow to open, but once we are in, it's fine to use, no lag or delayed typing. I still like NeoFetch. It fits on the screen better, but it's removed from Arch's repositories and replaced with its newer, bigger brother, Fastfetch. Look, see? It doesn't fit as nicely as NeoFetch. But you can see here the 2 GB of RAM, DDR2. Battery looks a bit knackered. And only 678 packages installed. This really is bare bones. And CPU. Up until seeing it here, I didn't know what the CPU was. Core 2 Duo. Next, I want to get another favourite of mine going, Stacer. And again, Stacer isn't part of Arch's official repositories, so I need to install Yay, which you can think of like a community package manager version of Pacman. And at this point, if you're thinking, what the heck is Yay and Pacman, let me explain. Pacman is Arch's official package manager, and a package, in Linux terms, is just a piece of software bundled with all its files it needs. For example, to install LibreOffice, I type sudo pacman-s LibreOffice. This works because LibreOffice is in Arch's official repositories. If the software isn't in the official repositories, you can use ARU, the Arch user repositories, which is community maintained. For Fastfetch, I cloned the ARU packages from GitHub and built it from source using make pkg. This compiles a program on your CPU, which is a bit heavy for an old girl like this MacBook. Some ARU packages can be installed much easier with an ARU helper, like Yay. First, you need to install Yay itself from the ARU. And after this, you can simply type Yay-Stacer, and it handles downloading and installing everything automatically. With that jargon hopefully explained, we can get back to installing the Stacer with Yay. There you go, Stacer in action. Now for the real test. Will YouTube work on this plastic dinosaur? It's definitely not the quickest to load, but not horrendous. We find some high quality content to observe. It's loading at 480p standard. Let's push our luck and go for 1080p. I mean, it does it, but not particularly nicely. I think you could get away with watching at 720p if this really was your only device. Next, a quick look at eBay. Can you use this 2008 MacBook Pro to purchase another one? And well, yes you could, if you can find one. £37, a bit steep. It's the next day now, and I've got Wi-Fi working. It turns out this whole time, I just needed to do a system reboot, and the Wi-Fi applet would appear. It's funny how these things work, isn't it? So there you go, a 2008 MacBook Pro running Arch Linux. Now, I'm not recommending anyone go out and buy one of these, because really, these MacBooks are getting ready for museum duty. But it really is a testament to just how good Linux can be. You can get a modern operating system working on a 17-year-old laptop. Thanks for watching. Joe.